Hello guys, in today's video we look at the KuKirin G2, an electric scooter that on the paper tries to combine two words, classic city riding and a somehow more robust, almost off-road character. Here we have an 800-watt motor, a maximum speed of up to 45 km per hour, 10-inch tubeless tires, double suspension and a declared range of up to 55 km, all packed into a frame that visually looks more serious than a typical entry-level models. While this is one of their best-selling models, we will find out in this KuKirin G2 video review. Just by opening the box, it becomes clear that this is not a lightweight city scooter that will carry up the stairs with one hand. Everything is packed tightly, the scooter is well fixed and protective foam keeps each part in its place without any movement during transport. Inside comes almost completely assembled scooter, which also comes with a charger, some basic tools and screws for assembly, a detailed KuKirin G2 user manual, as well as additional parts such as a rear mudguard. Everything is very simple, without complications. We have to mount that mudguard, tighten the handlebars, and in a few steps you are ready for your first ride. Visually, the KuKirin G2 follows the brand's recognizable design language, a combination of black, gray and orange accent that gives a slightly aggressive, almost off-road inspired look. It doesn't try to be minimalistic or overly elegant, instead it goes for presence. The frame feels solid from the very first touch, there is a clear sense of metal construction and the structural stiffness. When you step on it for the first time, the platform immediately gives you a stable and a wide standing position, which makes a big difference in confidence, especially if you are coming from a smaller scooter. The handlebars are wide and give you a good sense of control even before you start moving. Everything feels proportioned for stability rather than the compact portability, and as it sets the tone of the entire riding experience. Let's also mention that the load capacity of up to 120 kg means that the scooter is suitable for a wide range of users. One of the things that really surprised us positively about this scooter is the screen, because this is not a classic outdated display but a more modern solution that really takes the entire user experience to the next level. It is a touchscreen that at the first glance gives the feeling that you are using something newer and more advanced compared to the most scooters in this class. The surface is large enough to clearly see all the information, and the resolution and the contrast are such that the data remains readable even while riding. That means that the design is actually functional, not just an aesthetic addition. Changing the ride mode, checking the status, basic settings, everything is available in a few touches without thinking. This feeling of direct control fits very well in everyday use, especially if you use the scooter several times a day. The difference between classic buttons and the touchscreen becomes very noticeable. Everything goes faster, more naturally and without frustrations. The controls on the handlebars are really minimal and only the necessary ones. So on the left side we have the turn signal button and the electronic horn. And on the right side we find the ignition button and the thumb throttle, which is quite pleasant and responds to the touch. Of course, there is also the rear and the front brake levers. Everything is really within reach and intuitively arranged. Right in front of the screen in that module we find the headlight, which is strong enough to make driving at night not a problem, and right next to it are the turn signals. It gives a very good viewing of the road ahead and allows you for safe driving in poor visibility conditions. The only downside is that the angle cannot be adjusted, so you are limited to the factory position. The taillight is bright and clear visible, especially when braking. They also accompanied the turn signals, which are a big plus for the city driving because they allow better communication with the traffic, although the rear ones could be a little more pronounced. The platform has specific dimensions of around 460 by 185 mm, which means that you have a lot of space for your feet. In practice, that means that you are not forced to stand in the rigid position, but can naturally distribute your weights and adjust your position while riding. And that it's something you feel after the first few minutes. The surface of the platform is coated with the anti-slip layer that provides a good grip, even when your sneakers are a little dusty or the road is not ideal. What further enhances the whole impression is the ground clearance of around 175 mm. That means that the scooter does not scrape over every bump, but has enough space to pass through real city conditions without stress. In city riding, the KuKirin G2 behaves very predictably and is actually quite calming, especially if you are coming from the lighter and weaker scooter. After the first few minutes of riding, you feel that this is not a nervous machine that reacts to every little thing, but a stable platform that simply follows your pace without drama. Now, the 10-inch tires in this case do a huge part of the job. They are not there just as a technical specification, but are really felt in practice. When you encounter poor asphalt bumps or occasional pothole, the scooter simply swallows them without transmitting everything directly to your hands and feet. Combined with the weights of the scooter, you get the additional layer of stability. It does not bounce and does not seem light and nervous, but remains firmly on the ground and keeps in direction. This is what separates it from a classic entry-level models that can be quite nervous on poor asphalt. The suspension on this model is one of those segments where you get more than you expect in this class. The front and rear spring shock absorbers work well enough that you feel the difference immediately after the first few meters of driving. Combined with the tires, the suspension gives the impression that the scooter can handle real driving conditions, not just perfect city roads. Here we have mechanical disc brakes with a diameter of 140 mm, and although they are not hydraulic, they work very well. What we like is progressiveless. There is no sudden grabbing and locking of the wheels. You can finally dose the braking force and control the deceleration without panic. The stopping distance between 4 and 10 meters depends on the speed and conditions, but in practice it works safely and reliably. Even at a higher speed, the scooter stops without the feeling of losing control. The 800-volt motor on the KuKirin G2 may not sound spectacular on the paper when compared to the more powerful dual motor models, but in this class of price category it is actually very healthy and realistically usable power. When you first step on the scooter and lightly press the throttle, you immediately feel that this is not the model that is trying to impress with aggression. There is no sudden jerk that surprises you and makes you instinctively lean backwards. Instead, the power comes linearly, controlled and very predictable. This means that every millimeter of movement on the throttle makes sense and you always know what the scooter is going to do. As you accelerate, the scooter slowly reaches its comfort zone, somewhere around 25 to 30 km per hour. You already feel that is stable, but the top speed of around 45 km per hour comes gradually and takes a little time to reach the top. But this does not seem like a drawback at all. Quite the opposite, this gradual approach to the speed makes it safer and more predictable in everyday driving. The torque of about 29 Nm should also be mentioned here. This is not a number that will glue you on the platform, but it is quite enough for the scooter to keep pace, not to lose speed on gentle hills, and not to seem like it's struggling in normal conditions. In short, it is not a brute brutal, but it's reliable, and that's often more important in this category. The 48 watts and a 15 amp-hour battery on the KuKirin G2 means in practice a total capacity of around 720 watt-hour, and this is actually one of the key things that defines how the scooter will behave in everyday life. Not just on the paper, it gives a very good balance between weight, performance and realistic autonomy. In ideal conditions on the flat road, a light rider, moderate speed and without many stops, it is possible to get close to the declared 55 km. If you use it to go to work, short city trips or a combination of driving and stopping, you will quickly realize that you do not have to constantly think about the battery. Charging takes between 8 and 9 hours, which means that this is not a scooter that you charge on the go, but simply plug it in the evening, leave it overnight and do not think about anything else until morning. The assembly on the KuKirin G2 is solved in a way that matches its character, simple, solid and without unnecessary complications. The mechanism is activated quickly and without much force, it works reliably and gives the impression of long-lasting durability. However, the 26 kg is not something you will carry every day without thinking. This is not a scooter for daily climbing stairs or combined with the public transport. It's more designed as a scooter that you drive, you park, you possibly transport in the car or you store in the garage or apartment. So folding here serves more as a practicality for storage than for constant transportation. The KuKirin G2 gives the impression of a scooter that was made with a very clear idea. It does not try to be the fastest, lightest and most extreme on the market, but wants to be reliable, stable and practical in everyday use. And that is precisely where its biggest advantage lays. It gives you enough power to not be boring to ride, it gives you stability that inspires confidence, especially on bad roads. It gives you a range that covers real needs without constant charging, and it gives you a construction that looks like it was withstand prolonged use without problems. If you are coming from a basic scooter and want to take a serious step forward, something that will give you more safety, more stability and more freedom when riding, the KuKirin G2 makes a lot of sense. And perhaps most importantly, it's a scooter that doesn't try to prove itself on paper but in real life, which is why it's one of their best sellers. If you want to check the current price, available promotional offers or detailed technical specification of this KuKirin G2 official sales links, you will find them at the video description below, but don't delay your purchase too long as quantities are limited. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video review. Until then, bye.